Alrighty, another 2 weeks actually. Hey everyone, thank you for downloading the podcast. Retro Gamers, Larry here.
Anthony here.
What's going on, Ant?
Not much. It's another day in paradise.
Same old, right?
Yeah, nothing changes here. Literally, nothing changes. I mean, there's never a cloud in the sky. It's always sunny. I shouldn't complain, but it's a little Groundhog Day to me.
Well, we took a week off, last week being what it was. But let's get kind of right into it. We last time we got together, we were speaking about superhero video games, and we kind of realized getting into it that Marvel and DC, this was going to be split up over a couple of episodes anyway, and it all stemmed.
Yeah, you know who we have to thank for that, right?
Exactly, that's what I was about to get into.
Mr. Frank Messina.
That's it, Frankie
Messina, who recommended we do this podcast, has now got squeezed two out of us.
He did, and he did. He texted us. He was like, "Thank you so much," and stuff like that. So he was definitely grateful.
Yeah, so I'm assuming he'll be equally grateful that we're continuing the trend.
Our super fan. So
yes, we have one.
We have one. That works.
Only one.
We're off to a start. Speaking of which, let's start episodes as we do every episode. Kind of where we are in, because here's, if you're just joining us, basically it looks like what we're going to do is, which we stumbled upon it. Me and Ant, we're going to take turns playing a video game pretty much all the way through. It started, and actually probably right now, Anthony's playing Shining Force 2. When he's done...
I am playing Shining Force 2.
When he's done, I'm going to pick up Castlevania 2. And,
which you've never played through, correct?
I've never completely played through it, no.
Yeah, because that's the ultimate goal. We're going to be playing through games that we always wanted to, but never actually played through. So.
And, doing it old school, so it's going to take a while. We're, 8 episodes in, and I think you're still... How far are you with Shining Force 2? Where are you?
I am on the final battle.
Oh, all right.
I am there. I am at the end. I am ready to go.
Okay.
I'm ready to take them down. When that happens, I don't know. I've been toying around with the idea of actually letting that final battle run live on Facebook on our site. So maybe we'll schedule it.
Oh, okay.
And get. And get 2 viewers, me and you.
That works.
But
no, 1, because I'll be logged in as Retro Gamer anyway.
That's a good point. So it'll just be us. But yeah, so now I was thinking maybe that's also something we would play around with. Like we'll set up a little event that I will be finishing Shining Force 2 and hopefully not falling flat on my face when I play through the final battle. And we'll do that. We'll do that soon.
That works. That sounds like fun. There you go. Be on the lookout, folks. We'll post it at our Facebook page. And then, now here's the thing. I'm debating, because as soon as you're done, I'll pick up Castlevania 2. But Castlevania 2, I don't have on the Virtual Console, but it's also coming out on the Mini NES, which I was going to try and buy anyway, which is in November. So I don't know if I'm going to...
Not too far away.
Yeah, not too far away. So there may be a little bit of a delay in between, because if I'm going to spend the money, I might as well just get the Mini NES.
True. Well, maybe we can find something for you to play in the meantime.
Oh, I could probably find something else, yeah. But,
yeah, I was just going to say, it's not like it's the only game out there you haven't played.
But we've been promoting it.
Yes, we have been promoting it, but you know what? Plans change.
I guess they do. So be on the lookout for that. That's going to be quite interesting. With that, though, we're going to jump right into it. Last time we spoke, again, superhero video games, Marvel. We talked a lot about Marvel, or we started talking about both, but just ended up talking Marvel.
Yeah, because as we were talking, I think we just realized that there are a ton of Marvel video games.
There sure are. There are definitely a ton of them. And on the flip, but it's funny because there are a ton of Marvel, but it feels like there's not a lot of DC games. At least to me.
No, I think DC has been very, very limited in regards to like which characters they decide to make video games on. I mean, outside of Batman and Superman, you really can't find that many.
That's really, we're looking at a list here right now, and just skimming it. Batman, Superman, Batman. I mean, First game, 79. That don't make sense. I guess it was Superman 1979. Atari 2600. Yeah, that can happen.
Yeah, I'm actually watching a video of it right now on YouTube because I have this game.
Oh, yeah?
I have Superman Atari 2600, and I remember it because it I had no idea what to do because again, these were Atari games. It's like you put the cartridge in.
Oh, I remember this game. I'm looking at it now. Yeah.
You put the cartridge in, the game just starts up, and you have to figure out what the hell to do. And I'm like, what? I'm like 5. I'm like 5 or 6 years old. Like, how am I supposed to figure this out? I don't know. There's a pixelated Superman on my screen who's just flying, and then eventually you figure out you got to catch the bad guys and put them in jail, and then save Lois Lane and get her home, and voila. I mean, that's
right.
The big idea. But basically what you do is you spend your entire time flying from screen to screen where the pixels just change to make it look like different aspects of the city until you find what you need to find to solve everything. Like I think there's a bridge you need to put back together, so I don't know. I mean it was some weird crazy. Yeah, it's Atari.
The cover art looks pretty sweet. Have you seen the cover art? Did you see that yet?
Yeah, the cover art's really good because that's how. Well, you got to remember, cover art is what sold video games back then. There was no internet. There was none of that stuff. So they made sure that they made kick-ass cover art so they could sell these games.
No, totally. So, all right. So Superman 79. We'll get into some of this in a moment, just to talk about how it's been pretty much Batman, Superman. The Flash was the first other superhero besides Batman and Superman get their own game. That was 1991 on Game Boy. So, I mean, 79 to 91 dominated. Oh, my God. That's like the TV show Flash, too, I think. Yeah, it was.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I didn't own it, but I'm looking at it right now. Holy cow. That is... Yeah, let's see. Based on the 1990 TV show, The Flash is a side-scrolling platformer. Fastest man alive. Player must guide the Flash through 13 levels and stop the Trickster from blowing up the city.
Nice.
Yeah. So Mark Hamill's probably in it too.
Well, I'm watching some gameplay of that too, and it's kind of weird watching because it's Game Boy, right? So it's black and white. So watching superhero games in black and white just seems kind of weird.
So and then after that, it started picking up with some different superheroes, but pretty much Batman and Superman, maybe even Batman really, because Superman didn't luck out too well with good video games.
No, in fact, Superman he's famously found on a lot of the top 10 worst lists of video games. Most notorious, I believe, is the Superman for the N64.
Oh, Superman 64, that was wicked.
That was, and it's funny, if you go back and you look at that game, it was called Superman 64, but the box art did not have a title for the game. It just has an image of Superman on it because they forgot to put the title of the game on there. I mean, granted, it was Superman from the artwork, but literally they forgot to put Superman 64 on the box.
They probably did it on purpose. Like, you know what? Let's try and sneak this game out. Hopefully no one will recognize that it's Superman.
Yeah, they'll just be like, they'll see the picture of Superman, they get it, whatever.
Well, Superman, I remember, started way back on, one of the first Superman games I played.
Atari 2600, we just talked about it.
That's when it started, but the one I remember was Superman on NES, a company called Chemco.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of these games, I mean, a lot of these games are like it, but it's going to be one of these games that you really have to see to understand what it just... It was it almost seemed like a Wall Street video game because, you start out as it's the classic Clark Kent, Superman, kryptonite all over the place, and, trying to get to General Zod and Ursa and Non. But just the gameplay was misleading, confusing, again, for someone, 87 the game came out, so I was 7 years old. Actually came out in North America in 88. So still, I was 8, 9 years old, maybe even 10. I didn't know what I was doing. The game was just very confusing, especially because you had to upgrade your superpowers, which I can't stand in superhero games.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, why...
That's just annoying.
Yeah, it's like, why can't he fly yet? And a lot of going back and forth, It wasn't a side-scroller. It was kind of almost like Who Framed Roger Rabbit or Dick Tracy. You have to go to one spot. You have to backtrack sometimes. You have to move forward. It was quite annoying, actually, in my opinion.
Well, what I always found equally annoying about it is nobody ever explained to me why the Statue of Liberty could talk. Because if you remember the opening sequence,
Yes.
Statue of Liberty starts talking to you
Yep,
about saving, about saving the day, and I'm like, what?
It's one of those
What?
things you like. It's a superhero game. You throw your hands up in the air. You kind of take it for what it's worth.
No. Well, you know what? I guess no, absolutely not. No, I mean, you had plenty of other options. There are plenty of other options. You don't need the Statue of Liberty talking. You really don't.
I think we touched on it once earlier. Let's face facts. Really, the game, in my opinion, and probably yours and a lot of people listening, that kicked off DC video gaming, Batman, NES, based on the video, based on the Tim Burton movie, 1989, Batman. Phenomenal. One of the best NES games, period.
Oh, yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, they really set the standard when it came to not only superhero video games, but movie-based video games. Because if you remember, and we did a podcast about it, a lot of movie-based video games are just awful. Yep. And it's a shame considering the fact that the very first Batman game was so great. I mean... Yeah.
It was great. It was just, for an 8-bit NES game, the sound, the music, even the graphics, the cutscenes. I talked about it once before. The scene in the movie, which they reproduce in the game, the Batmobile driving up to the chemical plant, shoots out the door, like the rectangle hole in the door. Even looked great in the NES video game.
Yeah, everything about it was just really was really well done. I mean. And again, you're going back to the NES days. I mean, when you think about some of the stinkers that were on NES, and we talked about that with on the Marvel side, the X-Men game was deplorable, and we just the Superman game is bad and whatnot. So to actually play through a superhero video game that was like awesome, especially with Batman. I mean, it was just special,
and it was challenging, and it was good challenging. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember a lot of the Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, there's a lot of games that are hard, but unnecessarily hard. But this game was challenging, which I think is good. Actually, very good. Yeah,
no, I mean, you don't want games to be too easy. I mean, although I feel like games, have gone that way, as of late. I think like how it looks graphically is more important now than difficulty. Mm-hmm. But, back then, because they can only work with 8 bits or, even when you got to Super Nintendo and stuff like that, it's like you were very limited with what you could do graphically, so they made up for that with difficulty. So games were really challenging, and you felt rewarded when you actually beat the damn thing.
Totally. And now this is something that, and again, we touched on it before, growing up, especially back then, I was more NES. But I never realized that there was a Batman on Genesis that was based on the movie. And this, I just found a friend of mine, Mario Gerasi, I'll give you a shout out there. He introduced me to, it was a clip on YouTube, I'll put up on, I think I already did, but I'll put it up again on the Facebook page, of Batman on Genesis. And let's face facts, Genesis was a stronger system than the NES. But this game, I would love to find a copy and play it, because not only visually, but it looks like gameplay-wise was just as phenomenal and challenging as the NES version.
Yeah, and that's also one that I've equally have never played. So I would be down to play that one for sure.
And the big differences between the two, obviously Genesis is able to hold more. The Genesis version had actually a Batmobile and a Batwing level, 2 different levels there, and the NES version was a bit more true to the movie, the plot of the movie. In fact, some of the villains, like I kind of, when I scrolled through the gameplay, near the end, there's like a couple of villains in the clock tower, but the same villains that were in the movie. The guy with the swords and the other ninja guy and everything like that, until you got to the Joker. So, it's, 20-something years, no, even more.
Well,
92.
It's been a while, but even putting the Mega game aside, did you know that there was a Batman arcade game based on the original movie?
Batman arcade game? No. Well, we didn't have many arcades near us.
No, we didn't have a lot of arcades near us, but it was made in 1990. The movie came out in 89. Mm-hmm. And if you go back and you look at the, just go to YouTube and look at the footage of the game. It was really awesome because it was a side scroller. And And back then, arcades look better than the NES and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like it looks more like 16-bit, almost like an SNES game.
Yep.
But you would do some side scrolling where you would fight the bad guys, and then you would jump in your Batmobile, and then it's like a first person shooter.
That's cool.
While you're driving through Gotham City. It's actually really awesome.
Yeah.
That's one that also escaped me when I was a kid. It's one of the things I'm discovering later in life.
No, it's funny you say that because also I'm looking through here. Superman arcade game came out in '88.
Oh wow!
And
I didn't know about that.
Graphics on that look phenomenal. Holy cow! I'm just don't mind us, as it's a podcast, and of course we're looking at photos. So,
well, yeah, I mean,
what not to do.
People don't expect us to just remember all of this stuff. We're old.
I'm lucky if I remember what I did last week, let alone 25 years ago.
Yeah, but I mean, the arcade games were always. I mean, at least back then, the arcade games were always going to be far superior to,
of course,
the video game systems at home because they had more memory they can play with.
Totally.
But just the idea of like all these arcade games that did exist back then that we didn't get to see. I mean, it's just awesome to look at them now.
Now it's going to make me try and find some of these arcades that I've run into, see what kind of games they have there.
Well, maybe we need a third podcast for superhero arcade games.
Oh boy, that one's going to be moving in the dark on that one.
Milk this
as much as we can. As much as we can.
But let's move on a little bit and get to
totally, because I was going to say
let's get to our.
Get to what?
What? I was going to say, let's get to the 16-bit because I'm dying to talk about my favorite Batman.
And that's what I want to get into because, let's face facts, after Batman on NES, things were going downhill for a while. There was Batman Return of the Joker, Superman, between NES, Game Boy stuff. But you're right. Super Nintendo is when things start to pick up.
Yes. And I give that full credit to the Adventures of Batman and Robin. That is probably my favorite superhero game my favorite retro superhero game, at least.
Agreed.
Yeah, because anybody our age knows how awesome the cartoon was. Mm-hmm. The Batman animated series cartoon. And this was like a direct lift of that show.
Sure was.
In video game form. And there weren't a lot of levels to it, but the levels in that game were so well thought out and so tailored to each specific villain that it was just absolutely enjoyable. I just remember all the frustration I would have playing that game when I would get to the Riddler's level, because the Riddler's level was a maze, and you needed to figure out his riddles in order to finish the maze, and it used to drive me crazy because I would always forget the answers.
If I may, I think, when did this game come out?
94.
Okay, yeah, 94, 95. We've already started talking. We already started hanging out and everything. I believe it was... I may have been over your house when we were at the Riddler stage, and we finally figured out the riddle. Remember the riddle at the end? It was, what was it, like Mantar or something like that? No, Mantar's a wrestler. No, maybe Mantar.
I don't remember.
It was something like that. Mantar,
like
I don't know. And I remember we went back. That level was repeated a lot. I just remember sitting there, and I just remember playing that game. We were at your house, and just that riddle is. God, I hated that stage.
Yeah, but I remember like the first stage in the game was the Joker, and you're running through an amusement park, and I loved that level. That level was so much fun, especially the fight with the Joker on the roller coaster. I just felt like everything they did in that game was so on point. The Poison Ivy level was fun.
Yep.
I believe there was a Two-Face level. I'm trying to remember.
Two-Face I think was later. Well, yeah, no, there was a Two-Face level.
Yeah. There was a Two-Face level. I mean, just everything was cool. And then, of course, you had Robin in the game as well. So you got to use him.
Two-player game.
For a two-player game. And then you had Catwoman, who would come and go, and you would fight her, and then she would help you. It just captured the cartoon perfectly, and it also just captured the overall essence of Batman.
That's it. You nailed it right on the head. Like you said earlier, it looked like it was literally lifted off the screen and into a video game, the way the graphics were on the Super Nintendo. The Genesis version was a little different. Genesis was more Mr. Freeze was ultimately the villain in that one.
Yes.
Sega CD, I forgot the game came out on Sega CD. I would have loved to have played the game on Sega CD. I feel like it would have been probably a bit more crisper on it. And probably the cutscenes would have been better.
I'm trying to remember if I still have it.
Really?
I may have it.
Holy cow.
I'm not sure. I mean, I still have my Sega CD. I haven't, taken it out in a dog's age. But
there's, I'm looking at a description here with the Sega CD. It says the animated segments on the Sega CD, about 16 minutes in total, in the video game are sometimes referred to as a lost episode of the series.
Yeah, but I think that game though was a completely different game. It wasn't like the SNES game. Like all these games were marketably different.
Oh, of course.
I think the Sega CD one was like I'm looking at it now. It was a Batmobile game.
Yeah, Batmobile, really Batplane. But still, it would have been I think it would have been interesting to play. If you have that, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. And just the whole idea of like you're right. It had an episode basically of the show in there, more or less.
Moving on from that, another great Super Nintendo game, Death and Return of Superman. Going to give him...
Yep, which I felt like followed the similar format of... Batman and Robin, and also like we talked about it last time, the Spider-Man games, Maximum Carnage.
Yep.
Same kind of look, same kind of style, and to me, same kind of success.
And what I really enjoyed about that, I mean, first of all, it's based on probably one of the best Superman storylines ever, the Death and Return of Superman, hence the title. But in the game, you pretty much played five different characters, because I think like each level you played a different version of Superman, because when he was dead there were like 4 different Supermen, or people trying to take him over.
There were the replacements.
Yes.
I still have I still have the comic books.
I think I still do too. I feel like I have one still sealed too. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that was so iconic. I mean, granted, I don't know if they're worth anything considering the fact that they knew they were going to sell a ton of them, so they made a ton of copies. But yeah, I mean, I still have those. I don't think, though, I've ever played this game.
Really?
I knew of it, and I knew friends of mine had it, but I personally don't think I ever played this one.
Oh, okay. It was a great game. It was definitely very fun. Yeah, if you're at a retro game store or something like that, definitely pick this one up. It's
definitely on my list to pick up. I gotta go shopping. But I think maybe this will be the one I do after you do Castlevania.
Oh, there you go. I like the sound of that. Alrighty. Yeah, I played it again on Super Nintendo. It also came out on Genesis. But and then that started some good stuff, some good games there. Batman Forever, well, not so hot. Yeah,
movie or game?
Honestly. Now, Justice League Task Force. You remember this game?
Yeah, vaguely.
It was a fighter. It was a Street Fighter
fighting game, right?
Street Fighter game. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, when I say Street Fighter game, meaning they battle each other. I had this for Super Nintendo. This game rocked, actually.
I was never a big fan of fighters. Once Mortal Kombat came out, I was just kind of all in with the blood and guts and stuff like that. So even when these started coming out, I mean, I think the only one that really grabbed me was Marvel Capcom.
Okay.
After Mortal Kombat. So like a lot of these, and I remember trying Marvel Superheroes, which was War of the Gems, which was a fighter based on the Infinity Gauntlet series. That I really enjoyed because Infinity Gauntlet's one of my favorite, comic book miniseries of all time. But yeah, Justice League Task Force was never one that I wound up playing.
It was.
I do remember it though.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it got some bad reviews. Don't get me wrong. No one was crazy about it, but I liked it. It had a handful of characters, some of which there was 1 or 2 I never heard of, but it had just real quick. Aquaman. Let's use him. Batman, Flash, Superman, Green Arrow, Wonder Woman, Cheetah. Now I was like, who's this? Despero, and then Darkseid.
Yep.
So
of course, yeah,
that was a good fighter. I think it's an underrated fighter. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I feel like after the 16-bit era went away, I think when it came to PlayStation, I don't think they knew what to do, or they didn't have the license or whatever. But I don't think there were any PlayStation games, like PlayStation 1.
No, there were, but it was based on the movies, like Batman and Robin. There was the PlayStation game, which was not good.
Right. Like the movie, I've removed it from my brain, so or tried to.
And then they started, but you're right, PlayStation really didn't get a lot of that. They got some, like Batman Beyond, which I was never crazy about the cartoon, so I wasn't crazy about the games.
And then we know what N64 had. They had that one winner.
What?
That one. That
Superman.
Oh, Superman.
Well,
Superman 64.
They also had Batman.
So fond of your awfulness.
Oh, please. They have Batman Beyond, but again, it's Superman that everyone can only focus on. And it's funny. Now that I look at this list and we're talking, I'm shocked that there was only two DC superhero games on the N64. Like, I just never put two and two together.
No, I mean that. I feel like that era between like PlayStation 1 and N64 was kind of like a drought for DC superhero games. There really weren't that many because the next one that I remember that I really enjoyed was Batman Vengeance on GameCube.
Yes,
that game I loved. In fact, I even I wound up at some point of trading it in because once you complete those games, it's like whatever, you're done with them.
Mm-hmm.
But I wound up buying it back. I wound up buying it again. I still have it shrink wrap because I've always wanted to play through it again because it was probably after Batman and Robin on SNES. It's the most memorable Batman game for me. I loved every minute of that game.
I totally agree.
Absolutely loved it.
The game was I think I had it for PlayStation 2, but I hear you. Absolutely fantastic, that game. But then, unfortunately, after that, it kind of started dipping down again. Superman Shadow of Apocalypse. But we're starting to move into like GameCube and PlayStation 2 and stuff like that.
And then the ridiculously hideous. And if you've never seen this game before, I recommend you just go watch a video of it just to see how bad it is. Aquaman Battle for Atlantis.
I knew it. I knew you were going to. I was staring right at it. I knew you were going to say that.
Now, Superman gets Superman 64 gets a bad rap. Like, they call it, like, the worst, like, probably one of the worst games of all time. Clearly, they don't know about Aquaman Battle for Atlantis.
It was so glitchy and everything, too.
It was atrocious. It really absolutely atrocious. And then, look at the company who made it. It was made by a company called Lucky Chicken. I have no idea who Lucky Chicken is. I have no idea how they got the DC license, but clearly they were going for a cash grab here. And they just screwed it up royally. You
get the rights to Aquaman by being at the bar at 3 o'clock in the morning with a DC representative after a long night of bed.
That is exactly what happened, I'm sure. And if you look at their list of games, like I just clicked on it, I'm looking at Wikipedia, but they put out, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 games in their entire, career. Aquaman is not the only license they had. They managed to get the rights to Hot Wheels, Tonka, Land Before Time.
I just clicked on their website. It's under construction.
Well, I wonder why.
Oh my God.
I think it's safe to say anything Lucky Chicken is A, not so lucky, and B, probably downright deplorable. And Aquaman is definitely their prize.
Definitely. And I'll give a little shout out to a guy on YouTube, JonTron, does a lot of YouTube reviews. And one of the first ones I watch, he's very funny. Go watch him, JonTron. One of the first reviews I seen him do was Aquaman. And it was so funny between the gameplay and just his reaction to it. Oh, the game is horrible.
It's terrible. I mean, the fact that you're swimming and fighting at the same time and you just can't. Oh God. Okay. All right. No. Moving on.
Beyond that, and then in between, and you're right, because then after that we start moving up in the systems. But and I know you weren't a big handheld gamer. I was, but I didn't have many of these superhero games as much, but they were. I've seen some stuff like Batman animated series on Game Boy. I'm just going to give some shout outs here. That was really good. And then also, again, I feel underrated. I played it a couple times. Batman, Chaos and Gotham, not too bad. Just a fun kind of side scroller there. But again, not so much on the handheld level later on, like the Game Boy Advance and stuff. Really, just ports of the ones from the main systems onto the.
And the real thing to talk about, of course, which doesn't really apply to us since we're retro gamers, are the Batman Arkham series, because that's been heralded as like some of the best games, superhero games ever. But we're not allowed to talk about that.
And some of the best original gameplay, but maybe one day we'll get there on a different podcast.
Yes. One day I will actually play those.
And I'm kind of waiting for, the virtual console. Again, we go back and forth.
Yes.
Anthony's the physical games. I don't mind the virtual console, but bottom line, I'm kind of hoping some of these games would come out on the virtual console, because some of these games, I just don't know why Sunsoft or whoever owns them now wouldn't put out the Batman The Batman. Wouldn't put out Batman just, well, I guess because of the movie rights and everything. Now that I'm talking.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I think it's just a lot of licensing issues, and there are a lot of companies involved because you gotta involve DC, which means involving Warner Brothers now, and then and then you got to involve obviously the video game systems, whichever virtual consoles you want to drop them on. I mean, it doesn't sound too complicated on our end, obviously, because we see a lot of third parties do it. But I just think when you get to those big companies like Warner Brothers and stuff like that, it's just it's a lot more
definitely right. And if I may, just to jump ahead just a little bit, if you want to get kind of an old school feel with a new school game, Batman Brave and the Bold on the Wii, that actually has a very classic feel to it. If I may, just kind of a throw. That was a pretty good game. But yeah, DC not as, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, prolific, I don't know. Not as many games out there with DC and not as many hits as Marvel has. But DC tried their best. But I don't know why they didn't dip into the well any more than just Batman and Superman.
Well, you also got to remember, I mean, we're talking about an era when comic books were, especially when we get to the 90s, like I feel like up until the mid 90s, like comic books were pretty hot. Like 70s, 80s, and 90s or early 90s were like, comic books were like doing ridiculously well. And then I just think they started taking a downturn somewhere around the invention of this thing called the internet. And I don't know if the internet I honestly don't know if the internet had anything to do with it, or if it had to do with movies, and then DVDs came out and stuff like that. But once comic books started to go on a decline, I feel like that's when these things started to fade away. I think Marvel was more on top of it than DC, because Marvel was also really the first one to take advantage of films. I remember X-Men in, what was that, 99 or no, I'm sorry, 2000. Yeah, X-Men in 2000, and then Spider-Man right after that. So Marvel got into the movie industry, or at least more mainstream movie industry. I mean, because DC was really just focused on Batman and Superman. Big surprise, they're still focused on.
I mean, it's their big names and they're big grabs. So
no, it's a big grabs. But Marvel started dipping into more of their other stuff. But I just think they had a better handle on video games because they thought that would help resonate their keep their characters relevant and everything like that. Since the comic books weren't doing as well, and then once the movie started coming out, now we have this big Now, obviously today superheroes are huge, but Marvel just always, and I credit Marvel to this. I think the reason why they're doing so much better than DC is because they never fully disappeared. Like I felt like there was a time where like DC was completely forgotten for a while. I don't think Marvel ever was, because they were always out there trying different things and going through different venues.
I can understand that. I can see that.
That's me.
That
could be my bias. I've always been a Marvel guy. So.
I was going to say, but you're also a comic book guy. Like I'll admit, growing up, I didn't read comic books. So.
Oh yeah, no, I love comic books, and to be honest with you, I mean, when I talk about the mid '90s when comic books started to take that downturn, that's actually when I stopped really paying attention to comic books. Like it was around that time. It was around like 95, 96 when all of a sudden I was like, oh. Hello, new desktop computer with Windows 3.1. And what is this disk? AOL what? What's AOL? Oh, I'm enjoying this. This is more fun. What, video games on my computer? Okay.
What is this, Solitaire? This is the greatest game of all time. So and that probably also could be just like with everyone getting older. At the time, and then everyone circled back around, and now everyone on the planet has a Peter Pan syndrome. But I think that's probably what it was too. Just us getting older and thinking we were trying to move on to get a little bit more mature, and who knew that wasn't going to work?
Yeah, I know exactly. I mean, who knew that the stuff that we were possibly ridiculed about when we were kids would turn out to be something that's now it's the in thing to do. It's like totally. Oh my god, superheroes are so cool. It's like, really? I go, you used to beat me up for that 20 years ago. So who knew?
Yeah, right. Who knew? And but I'm going to be on the lookout for some of these next time I hit up like a game, retro game, and me mostly because I still have some of the I still got my Game Boy.
I will say a special thank you to Frankie Messina for letting us cover this topic, because now I'll thank him. My wallet's not going to thank him, because now I need to run out and buy some of the physical games. You'll do all the virtual consoles that you can find, but I'm going to go out and actually buy some. physical games. Oh, by the way,
Yes.
I did happen to notice that on this list there were no video games.
Oh, there's a ton of video games. Oh. Well, I mean, let's see.
What happened?
There was.
I think DC and Marvel were both smart enough to stay away from the Virtual Boy.
As you can see, between 1995 and 2000, there's only like 4 or 5 games released. And yet those games managed to hit every major system, including Game.com.
including Game.com and the Sega Saturn, but they did not hit the Virtual Boy.
They felt that the Virtual Boy was probably too much of a system to allow for that. So, and that's what I'm going to say.
Sure, you keep thinking that.
I miss my Virtual Boy. With that being said, I think now
nobody else does. Trust me.
I think let's get ready to wrap this up here. All right, yeah. Thank you again, Frankie Messina, for this great idea. We got, like you said, 2 episodes out of it. So thank you, sir.
My favorite is bald person on the planet.
There you go. And of course, be on the lookout wherever we are. Thank you for downloading the podcast. Listen to us, share it, like it. Follow us on Facebook, Retro Gamers Podcast. And with that, we're going to call it another week. So from my end here on the East Coast, thank you very much for joining us.
And thank you from the West Coast, where I am 3 hours behind and have more of my day left.
There you go. And now I got things to do. All right, folks, we'll catch you next time.